The ink on the final entry was still wet, glistening under the dim light, though the Bible had been sealed in an attic for 73 years. A coppery tang filled the air, the scent of blood, old and new, mingling with the dust of decay. From the spine of the book came a low, wet, tearing sound, like parchment being slowly peeled from flesh. The temperature in the room plummeted, the damp cold clinging to skin like a second layer. Then, a whisper, not from the room, but from inside the reader's own mind, a voice that was not their own, reciting the freshly inscribed name. Every muscle locked. A primal, suffocating dread took hold, rooting them to the spot as the whispering grew clearer, more insistent. The list of births was complete, but in this family, a new name could only mean one thing. Someone, or something, had just signed its own death certificate into their bloodline. The camera freezes. Narrator. What if the most crucial book in your family, the one preserving your entire history, held a lie so profound it could unmake you? Not just your name erased from its pages, your very existence voided. For Sarah Miller, that lie wasn't hidden in a diary or locked box. It was inscribed in sacred ink, under the heading, "No one ever questions." The finger moved to the opposite page, where the heading, "Deaths," stood stark in the lamplight. The air grew heavy with the scent of old paper and something metallic. The trembling finger settled on a single entry in the worn family Bible. The camera pushed in, revealing the precise, elegant script. A scent of old paper and dust filled the air, sharp and sudden. It was here, in this sacred text, that her name had been recorded for eternity. Her birth date, and a date of death 20 years ago. The discovery was made in the attic, among forgotten heirlooms and the scent of old paper and cedar. The handwriting matched her grandmother's, but the entry made no sense. Sarah was very much alive, yet here, in this sacred ledger, she had been recorded as deceased for 2 full decades. The truth had been waiting in the silence all along. Flickers of her childhood appear, a gap-toothed grin, graduation, her wedding day. This was Sarah, by every measure, a woman anchored to a stable life. A graphic designer from Austin, Texas, a devoted wife to Mike, a mother who never missed a soccer game. She'd describe her childhood in suburban Ohio as happy, normal, a little quiet perhaps, too quiet. Robert and Eleanor Miller were intensely private people, respectable, dignified, and emotionally restrained. They kept their family heirlooms gleaming, and their deepest feelings locked away, sealed tight behind a veneer of perfect composure. At the heart of their home sat one revered object, the Miller family Bible. It was the silent centerpiece of their quiet, orderly world, a world where not everything spoken was said aloud. The massive, leather-bound tome passed down from Robert's father wasn't merely a religious text. It was the family ledger. Every birth, marriage, and death had been meticulously inscribed across its front pages in faded iron gall ink. The air in the room grew heavy with the scent of old paper and something faintly metallic, like dried blood. This ledger didn't just record history. It was the unassailable truth of their lineage, written in permanent ink. It was law, but after Eleanor's passing, a hollow grief consumed Robert. Sarah returned to Ohio, hoping to bridge the growing silence and sift through fading memories. The house held the scent of aged paper and a faint, metallic whisper in the still air. Every surface felt damp with forgotten time. Every shadow a pocket of unresolved past. Sarah found her father in his study, the family Bible spread open before him. His hand shook as he added Eleanor's date of death to the family record. There was a palpable, unsettling relief in his eyes when Sarah offered to help update the other entries. To ensure everything was correct, he said, his voice barely a whisper in the heavy air. What began as a simple, loving task turned into something else entirely. The guitar track in the background gained a subtle, underlying electronic pulse, like a distant, unnatural heartbeat. The air in the room grew thick and still, carrying the faint, metallic scent of ozone. As she turned another page, a primal sense of unease began to coil in her stomach, a silent warning that the quiet of the study was no longer benign. A faint smile touches her lips as she reads her own birth entry. Her gaze drifts to the deaths section to verify her grandparents' details. The smile dies on her lips. Her eyes dart across the page, scanning frantically. The births page was a chronicle of joy, and there she was, Sarah Ann Miller, April 17, 1986. But as her gaze drifted to the deaths page, time itself seemed to congeal. Her breath hitched, a sharp, involuntary gasp that tasted of old paper and dust. The air grew heavy and still, the only sound the frantic, accelerating thrum of her own heart. There, nestled between her paternal grandfather and a great aunt she'd never known, was an entry that defied logic. Sarah's eyes locked onto the stark dates. Sarah Ann Miller, April 17, 1986, to August 23, 2004. Her own name, her own birth year, and a death date from her childhood. Her voice emerged as a fractured whisper, barely audible against the sudden, oppressive weight in the room. "Dad?" She turned to find her father, Robert, framed in the doorway. His face was a mask of ashen pallor, his expression not of surprise, but of grim, long-held recognition. He looked cornered, like a trapped animal. It wasn't a smudge on the page, or a clerical error. The air in the room grew thick and metallic, like old blood. This was the same Sarah Miller, and the document stated, unequivocally, that she had died at 18, the summer after high school, 2 decades ago. Sarah's voice quavered, thin with disbelief. "What is this? Is this a joke?" Robert's gaze was fixed on the floor, his posture heavy with a terrible weight. His words came out barely a whisper, thick with a truth he couldn't escape. It's a mistake, sweetheart. A reckless error I committed after your mother. I wasn't thinking clearly." A mistake? In the Bible? The one object he treated with absolute reverence? Her thoughts churned, a cold knot of dread tightening in her stomach. The air in the room felt suddenly thin, carrying the faint scent of old paper and something metallic. August 2004. That was the summer the foundation fractured. The humid air grew thick with the ozone scent of impending storms when she announced her move to Texas with Mike, then just her boyfriend. Her parents. Fury wasn't shouted. It was a cold, damp silence that settled over the house like a burial shroud. Every conversation after that announcement carried the sticky residue of betrayal, the unspoken words hanging like cobwebs in the stale air. The warnings came like a prophecy. "He's not right for you. You'll ruin your life." Their final argument detonated, a nuclear silence that shattered everything. She walked out, and the air between them turned to permafrost. For years, what little communication remained was a brittle, frigid exchange. Had her father's grief-stricken rage at her rebellion been so consuming that he'd symbolically erased her from existence? The possibility was psychologically plausible, yet cruelly bizarre. A father's wounded pride manifesting in a permanent declaration. But the handwriting presented a chilling contradiction. It lacked the shaky, aged script her father now possessed. The letters were too neat, too precise. An unsettling detail that whispered of something far more calculated. Years later, Sarah found herself in her childhood bedroom, the air heavy with dust and memory. She scrolled through old digital archives, the screen's blue light cutting through the room's gloom. Her scrolling slowed, then halted completely. A faint scent of ozone and damp paper filled the space as she stared at what shouldn't exist. Driven by a gnawing dread, Sarah hunched over her keyboard. The screen's pale glow was the only light in her dark room. Her fingers, cold and trembling, typed her own name followed by her hometown. Each keystroke felt like a violation. The search results loaded with a hollow click. Page after page of digital nothingness stretched before her. Not a single mention, not a trace, as if she had never existed at all. The emptiness felt heavier than any secret. Then, buried in a digitized local newspaper archive, she found it. A grainy scan of a small clipping from August 25, 2004. Below it, a photograph of an 18-year-old girl, her breath caught. The face staring back was almost identical to Sarah's. The silence in the room grew thick, broken only by the dry rustle of paper. A faint, metallic scent, like old coins, seemed to seep from the report itself. Then, the details aligned. The same name, the same small town, the exact same age. The coincidence was not a comfort. It was a cold, damp weight settling in the chest. The girl in the photograph, she wore Sarah's smile, but the eyes weren't hers. The nose was wrong, the bone structure subtly off. This was another girl entirely. A girl whose name was lost, swallowed by the cold, damp archives. A girl who vanished, leaving behind only this uncanny echo and the faint, metallic scent of old ink. The world seemed to lurch beneath Sarah's feet. A metallic scent, like ozone after lightning, filled the air. Her skin prickled, a cold, sticky dread clinging to it. Was it a coincidence? The sheer improbability of it was paralyzing. She confronted her father again, thrusting the article toward him. All color vanished from his face, leaving a pallid mask. This wasn't the flush of a symbolic lie caught. It was the hollow gaze of a man staring at a ghost he'd buried long ago. The climax. Robert. "We couldn't have another scandal, not after your uncle. We'd lost so much face in this town." Narrator. The air grew heavy with the scent of decay and the weight of decades-old secrets. Narrator. Then, the dam broke. The truth spilled out in ragged whispers. The truth held a devastation deeper than any lie. The missing girl was a cousin, severed from the family tree after a shameful incident Sarah had never been told. When Sarah vanished, it ignited a media frenzy in their small town. Reporters swarmed, their lights carving the night, turning private grief into a dark, public spectacle. The air grew thick with the scent of damp earth and the distant, acrid tang of ozone from the storm brewing on the horizon. It was a tragedy, ripe and unsettling, that fed on whispers and the sticky residue of old, buried shame. Robert's voice grew thick with decades-old dread. Your mother was carrying you then. We were just kids ourselves, and the whole town whispered about that cursed Miller family. Their name was poison. We lived in constant fear that it would taint you before you ever took your first breath. The pieces clicked into place, forming a terrifying tableau. So, they fled, crossing state lines, leaving everything behind. But they did more than just vanish. They wove a narrative, a story steeped in the scent of damp earth and cold, metallic fear. To any new neighbors in Ohio, to any casual friend who might bring up the infamous missing Miller girl, Robert and Eleanor had a rehearsed, heartbreaking response. Our daughter Sarah died that summer. It's too painful to discuss. Robert's voice breaks, heavy with a grief now tinged with a terrible secret. We wrote it in the Bible to make it real for us, to sell the story to ourselves. To protect you, we believed if we immersed ourselves completely in the fabrication, it would erect an impenetrable barrier between you and that abyss. We interred her remains so that you might survive. You bestowed upon me her identity and bequeathed to me her demise. For 2 decades, I have inhabited a sepulcher you carved for another. Sarah gazes at her sleeping children, the normalcy of the scene feeling like a fragile veneer over something darker. With trembling hands, she opens a drawer and retrieves a single, folded printout. The missing persons report. She never pressed charges. What law could possibly govern a crime against the soul? The air in the room grew thick with the scent of old paper and a deeper, metallic tang of dread. Her relationship with her father is now a ghost of its own, a hollow echo of what once was. She visits, but their conversations are brittle things, spoken only of the mundane, never touching the real. In his house, the Bible rests like a tombstone, marking 2 graves, one for the sister who vanished, and one for the girl she was forced to become to fill the void. But the question, sharp as a shard of glass, haunts her every single day. The question now gnaws at your soul. Her parents insisted they did it to grant her a fresh start, to let her truly live. But what is a life constructed on a borrowed name and a stolen identity? The camera holds on Sarah's reflection as her eyes lock with ours. If the very record of your existence was a carefully crafted lie, a forgery meant to bury a terrible secret, then what are you? Are you the living daughter? Or the phantom whose name was inscribed in sacred ink? The ghost who was never meant to be? The ink on Sarah's death entry smudged, as if a single tear had marred the page. The image held for a moment, the blurred letters seeming to weep into the parchment. Then, the screen dissolved into absolute darkness, swallowing the final evidence. The last, lingering piano note faded, leaving behind a hollow, heavy silence.